Welcome to my Channel Deep Sleep Mission-DSM. As we begin, I would be delighted if you could share your location in the comments below. It's truly inspiring to witness how far this content travels and to connect with viewers from across the world. The doctor said it was impossible, but here I am, breaking out in hives just thinking about my 10th birthday party. Not metaphorically. Actual welts rising on my skin like angry red islands on a map of my forearms. The itch starts behind my eyes first, always behind my eyes, like something trying to claw its way out from the inside. If you're listening to this right now, comfortable in your bed, maybe with the lights dimmed low, I need you to understand something. This isn't just a story, this is a warning, because what happened to me, it's spreading. And the only way to stop it is if someone finally believes me. So please, just listen, and whatever you do, don't think too hard about your own memories while you do. The story begins now. My name is Sarah Chen, and 3 weeks ago I discovered I'm allergic to my own past. It started in Dr. Martinez's office in downtown Seattle. Just a routine checkup, nothing special. I was filling out those endless medical forms, you know the ones. Previous surgeries? None. Medications? Just birth control. Allergies? I was about to write none when my hand cramped. The pen dropped from my fingers, clattering on the linoleum floor. As I bent to pick it up, a memory flashed through my mind. Sudden and sharp as broken glass. My grandmother's funeral. The smell of lilies. The way my black dress itched against my neck. And then the hives started, first on my wrists, then spreading up my arms like wildfire. Dr. Martinez rushed in when the receptionist called for help, took one look at me, and immediately reached for an EpiPen. "What did you eat?" she asked, her voice calm but urgent. "What did you touch?" "Nothing," I gasped, scratching frantically at the welts. "I was just remembering something." She paused, the EpiPen halfway to my thigh. Remembering. I know how it sounds. Trust me, I know. But that's when it started. This impossible condition that's turned my life into a waking nightmare. The tests came back normal. Blood work, skin prick tests, even a CT scan when Dr. Martinez started grasping at straws. Everything normal. Perfectly, frustratingly normal. Psychosomatic reactions can manifest physically, she explained during our third appointment. Stress, anxiety, they can cause real symptoms. But this wasn't anxiety. I knew anxiety. This was different. This was my body treating memories like poison. It took me a week to figure out the pattern. Happy memories caused mild reactions. Just some itching, maybe a few small bumps. But the sad ones, the traumatic ones, those sent me to the emergency room. I started keeping a journal, had to. Every reaction, every memory that triggered it, every symptom. The patterns that emerged were disturbing. Memories from before age 5? No reaction. Recent memories from the last 6 months? No reaction, everything in between. Russian roulette with my immune system. My roommate, Jessica, found me on the bathroom floor 2 weeks ago. I'd made the mistake of looking through old photos on Facebook. Just scrolling, not even thinking, when I saw a picture from college. Spring break, junior year, 6 of us crammed into Tyler's rusty Ford Explorer, driving down to San Diego. The memory hit full force. The taste of gas station coffee, the way Madison always sang off-key to whatever was on the radio, the scratch of sand in my swimsuit that never quite washed out. The reaction was immediate, violent. Hives spreading across my chest and back, my throat starting to close. Jessica shot me with the EpiPen I'd started carrying everywhere and called 911. "You need to see a specialist," she said later, sitting on the edge of my hospital bed. "This isn't normal, Sarah." I laughed, bitter and sharp. "You think? What kind of specialist treats someone allergic to their own memories? An allergist, a psychiatrist, an exorcist?" I found Dr. Reeves through a Reddit thread at 3 a.m. Someone in our medical mysteries had posted about unusual neurological reactions, and buried in the comments was a link to his research. Dr. Nathaniel Reeves, University of Washington Medical Center, specialized in rare neurological conditions. His office smelled like old books and hand sanitizer. Not a combination you'd expect, but somehow it worked. He was younger than I'd imagined. Maybe early 40s, with tired eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Tell me about the first reaction," he said, not looking up from his notepad. So I told him about the funeral memory, about the hives, about how I'd started avoiding anything that might trigger a recollection. Old songs, certain smells, entire neighborhoods in Seattle where significant things had happened. "Interesting," he murmured. "And you said memories before age 5 don't cause reactions?" "Nothing. I can think about my 4th birthday party all day long. The clown my mom hired, the chocolate cake shaped like a butterfly. Nothing happens." He finally looked up. "What about manufactured memories? Things you've been told happened but don't actually remember?" I frowned. "Like what?" "Well, for instance, do your parents have any stories about you as a baby? Things they've told you so many times they feel like memories?" I thought about it. Mom loved telling the story about how I'd eaten an entire jar of strained peas and turned green. Dad's favorite was about my first word being kitty instead of mama or data. "I can think about those fine," I said. No reaction. "So it's specifically autobiographical memories, ones you personally encoded." He scribbled something in his notepad. "Sarah, I'm going to ask you something that might sound strange. Have you experienced any gaps in your memory, times you can't quite recall?" The question sent a chill down my spine. Because yes, now that he mentioned it, there were gaps. Small ones I'd never paid attention to before. A week here, a weekend there. Nothing dramatic, just fuzzy spots, like trying to remember a dream after waking up. "Everyone has gaps," I said, defensive without knowing why. "Of course, but I'd like to do some tests. See if we can find a neurological basis for your condition." The tests were extensive. EEGs while I deliberately triggered memories. MRIs before, during, and after reactions. Blood draws at precise intervals. Dr. Reeves was thorough, I'll give him that. It was during the 3rd round of testing that things got weird. I was in the MRI machine, the rhythmic banging loud even through the headphones. Dr. Reeves's voice came through the speaker. "Okay, Sarah, I want you to think about your high school graduation." I did. The polyester gown, the way my cap kept sliding off my head, my mom crying in the 3rd row. The hives started immediately, but I was used to that by now. What I wasn't used to was what showed up on the scan. "Sarah," Dr. Reeves's voice was different now, uncertain. "I need you to stay very still. Think about the memory again, but try to focus on the edges of it, the before and after." I tried. Thought about getting ready that morning, my dad struggling with his tie. Thought about the party after, my aunt's famous potato salad. "Fascinating," he breathed. When they finally pulled me out of the machine, Dr. Reeves looked pale. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "What?" I demanded. "What did you see?" He pulled up the images on his computer. My brain lit up in colors I didn't understand. "These areas here," he pointed to bright spots, "this is normal memory recall, but these..." He indicated dark patches at the edges of the bright areas. "These shouldn't be there." "What are they?" "I don't know. They look almost like scar tissue, but neurological, as if something was removed and the edges are still healing." My blood ran cold. "Removed? What do you mean, removed?" "Sarah." He turned to face me fully. "Has anyone ever suggested you might have experienced trauma? Something your mind might have protected you from?" I left his office with more questions than answers and a referral to a colleague who specialized in unusual memory disorders. Dr. Emily Walsh, also at UW Medical Center just 2 floors up. The elevator ride felt like it took forever. 2 floors, 40 feet, maybe. But in those 40 feet, a terrible thought started to form. What if the memories making me sick weren't really my memories at all? What if they were something else, something that had been put there? The elevator dinged, doors opened, and standing in the hallway, as if she'd been waiting for me, was a woman I'd never seen before. "Sarah Chen?" she asked. I nodded, mute. "My name is Agent Dinah Fuller, FBI. We need to talk about your condition." The conference room Agent Fuller led me to was sterile and cold, government building cold. She offered me water, which I declined, and coffee, which I accepted just to have something to do with my hands. "How long have you been experiencing these reactions?" she asked, settling across from me with her own cup. 3 weeks officially. But thinking back, maybe longer, just not as severe. She nodded, like this made sense. "And Dr. Reeves showed you the scans? You know about the scans?" My voice cracked. "Sarah, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to try very hard not to panic." She paused, studying my face. "You're not the first person we've seen with this condition." The coffee cup slipped from my hands. Hot liquid splashed across the table, but I barely noticed. "What?" 17 cases in the last 2 months, all in the Pacific Northwest. All with the same symptoms, allergic reactions to certain memories, neurological scarring, and... She hesitated. "And what?" "And all with significant gaps in their memory between ages 5 and 25. Gaps that, when investigated, correspond to times when they were reported missing." The room spun. I gripped the edge of the table. I was never missing. I would remember, my parents would have said. Agent Fuller pulled out a tablet, swiped through some files. June 15th, 2018. You were reported missing by your roommate at the University of Oregon. Found 3 days later in a park in Eugene. No memory of where you'd been. The date rang a bell, but the memory was fuzzy, like trying to see through frosted glass. October 2021, she continued. Your employer reported you hadn't shown up for work in a week. Portland police found you in your apartment, convinced only 2 days had passed. Each date she mentioned sent a spike of pain through my skull. Not quite a memory, not quite forgotten. Something in between. "What happened to us?" I whispered. "That's what we're trying to figure out. But Sarah, we think someone has been editing your memories. Removing certain ones, replacing them with others. And your body is rejecting the false ones like a bad organ transplant." She drove me to a safe house in Ballard. A normal-looking craftsman home from the outside, but inside, monitors, medical equipment, and 3 other people who looked as shell-shocked as I felt. "This is Marcus, Jennifer, and David," Agent Fuller introduced. "They're experiencing the same condition." Marcus was younger than me, maybe mid-20s, with the exhausted look of someone who hadn't slept in days. Jennifer kept scratching at her arms, even where I couldn't see any hives. David sat perfectly still, like movement might trigger a reaction. "The reaction started 3 weeks ago for all of us," Jennifer said without preamble. "Same day, same time, give or take an hour." "March 15th, around 2 p.m., David added. I nodded. That matched my timeline exactly. "We think that's when whatever was suppressing the rejection stopped working," Agent Fuller explained. "Like anti-rejection drugs wearing off after an organ transplant?" "But why?" Marcus asked. "Why would someone do this, and how?" Agent Fuller pulled up a map on one of the monitors. Red dots clustered around Seattle, Portland, Eugene. Every person affected lived in or near these cities during their missing time. We found some commonalities. All of you attended certain events, visited certain places. She pulled up a list. My blood ran cold as I read it. The Emerald City Comic Con, 2018. The Portland Night Market, October 2021. The Seattle International Film Festival, 2019. I'd been to all of them. Or, I had memories of being at all of them, but now, thinking about it, the memories felt thin, like a movie I'd watched rather than something I'd lived. We believe someone used these crowded events as cover, Agent Fuller continued, to identify and take subjects for something. When you were returned, your memories of the experience were replaced with false memories of attending the events normally. But our bodies know, Jennifer said quietly. Our bodies remember what our minds can't. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd start to drift into a memory and jerk awake as the itching began. The others were the same. We sat in the living room, afraid to remember, afraid to forget. I keep thinking about my wedding, Jennifer said around 3 a.m. But the more I think about it, the less real it feels. Like, did I actually get married, or is that one of the false memories? I have a scar. Marcus showed us his palm, a thin white line across the lifeline. I remember getting it from a broken bottle at a party, but my mom swears I've had it since I was 10, from falling off my bike. Which memory is real? David had been quiet most of the night, but suddenly he spoke up. What if none of them are real? What if we're not even who we think we are? The question hung in the air like smoke, because that was the real horror, wasn't it? Not just that someone had stolen our memories, but that we couldn't trust any of the ones we had left. Agent Fuller returned the next morning with a specialist, Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a neuroscientist who'd been studying our brain scans. I found something, she said without preamble, pulling up images on her laptop. Look at the pattern of scarring. We crowded around the screen, the dark patches in our brains that Dr. Reeves had found. They weren't random. They formed a pattern, almost like circuit boards, David breathed. They look like circuit boards. Dr. Tanaka nodded grimly. Specifically, they look like neural interface pathways, as if something was plugged into your brains. The scarring is where the connections were severed. My hand went to the back of my neck involuntarily. There was a small scar there, so faint I'd never thought about it. Just assumed it was from childhood, but now... We all have them, Marcus said, touching the same spot on his neck. The scars. Agent Fuller and Dr. Tanaka exchanged looks. We need to do biopsies, Dr. Tanaka said. See if there's any residual technology. The procedures were done under local anesthetic. I watched on the monitor as they extracted tiny samples from the scar tissue. And there, embedded in what should have been normal tissue, were fragments. Tiny, almost microscopic, but undeniably artificial. Neural mesh, Dr. Tanaka identified. Partially biodegradable, which is why there's so little left. But this is advanced, years ahead of anything in current medical literature. So someone experimented on us, Jennifer said flatly, plugged us into something, stole our memories, and gave us fake ones. But why? What could they possibly gain? That's when Marcus had his seizure. It started small, just a twitch in his left eye. Then his whole body went rigid, back arching off the chair. But it wasn't a normal seizure. His eyes were open, tracking something none of us could see. And he was reciting something. Subject 47 neural mapping complete. Memory extraction at 73%. Emotional resonance patterns cataloged. Proceeding to Phase 2 integration. His voice was flat, mechanical, not his own. Marcus! Jennifer shook him, but he didn't respond. Hippocampal data transferred, amygdala responses archived. Subject shows high compatibility for long-term storage. Recommend immediate harvest before rejection syndrome onset. Then, as suddenly as it started, it stopped. Marcus collapsed, gasping. He panted. Did I just say what I think I said? Agent Fuller was already on her phone, barking orders. Dr. Tanaka was checking Marcus's vitals. but I was staring at the wall where a new thought was forming. A terrible, impossible thought. "We're storage devices," I said quietly. Everyone turned to look at me. Think about it. They map our neural patterns, extract our real memories, store them somewhere else. But why? Unless, I swallowed hard, unless they're using our brains as external hard drives, storing something in the space where our memories used to be. "That's insane," David protested. "Is it? Look at Marcus. He just recited a progress report. That wasn't his memory. It was theirs. Whatever they stored in his brain is starting to leak through." Jennifer was already having another reaction, hives spreading across her face. "So, we're walking around with someone else's data in our heads, and our bodies are rejecting it like a virus?" Dr. Tanaka pulled up Marcus's latest scan. The dark patches had changed, spreading like an infection. "If you're right, if there's foreign data stored in your neural pathways, then the rejection isn't just physical. Your brains are trying to delete files that don't belong. But delete them to where?" I asked. That's when the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in red. Agent Fuller drew her weapon, motioning for us to stay low. "We need to move," she said. "Now." But the door was already opening. A figure stood silhouetted in the doorway. Tall, thin, wearing what looked like medical scrubs. Their face was wrong. Features that didn't quite match, like a composite sketch made real. "Subject recall initiated," they said in a voice like grinding metal. "Please remain calm during the extraction process." Marcus screamed. Not in fear, but in pain. He clutched his head, blood trickling from his nose. They're downloading. I can feel them in my head, pulling. More figures appeared. All with those same wrong faces, all moving with synchronized precision. "The subjects are experiencing critical rejection," one noted clinically. "Accelerate extraction timeline. Run." Agent Fuller opened fire, but the bullets seemed to pass right through them. "Go." We scattered. I found myself running with David, crashing through a back door into the rainy Seattle night. Behind us, I could hear Marcus still screaming, Jennifer sobbing, Agent Fuller shouting orders. "The car!" David gasped, pointing to a sedan parked on the street. "Fuller gave me the keys earlier, just in case." We dove in, just as one of those things emerged from the house. In the rearview mirror, I watched it stand perfectly still, head tilted like it was listening to something we couldn't hear. "Drive," I urged. "Just drive." We made it 6 blocks before David had his seizure. The car veered wildly as his body convulsed, that same mechanical voice spilling from his lips. "Subject 12, attempting unauthorized departure. Activating retrieval protocols. Location tracked. Memory firewall failing." I grabbed the wheel, fighting to keep us on the road. "David, fight it." His eyes rolled back, showing only whites. "Primary storage corruption detected. Initiating emergency download. All substrates report to Central Hub for immediate extraction. Repeat, all substrates report." "No," I slapped him, hard. "You're David Chen. You're 28 years old. You live in Fremont. You have a cat named Mr. Whiskers. Remember." For a moment his eyes cleared. "Sarah, I'm here. Stay with me." But even as I said it, I felt it starting in my own skull. A pressure, like fingers pressing against the inside of my brain. Probing, searching, downloading. Memories that weren't mine flashed through my consciousness. A white room full of bodies in pods, connected by glowing neural mesh. Charts showing memory capacity, storage efficiency, rejection rates. A voice saying, "The human brain can store 2.5 million gigabytes. We only need to borrow a fraction. Sarah, your nose." I touched my face. Blood. The same nosebleed Marcus had. "They're in my head," I whispered. "I can see. Oh God, I can see what they did to us." Hundreds of us, thousands maybe, all walking around with pieces of something else stored where our memories should be. living hard drives for what? What could possibly be worth this? The answer came with another flash of foreign memory. The simulation requires distributed storage. No single system can contain it all. But networked human brains. Parallel processing across thousands of organic computers. It's the only way to preserve it before the cascade failure. Simulation? Cascade failure? I tried to grasp the concepts, but they slipped away like water. Sarah, we need to find the others. We need to... David's words cut off. In the reflection of the windshield, I saw his face change. Features rearranging, becoming one of those wrong composite faces. Download complete, he said in that grinding metal voice. Subject 12 successfully retrieved, initiating return protocol. He turned to look at me and his eyes were empty. Not dead, just empty, like looking into a blank hard drive. Your turn, Subject 23. I threw open the car door and ran. I'm recording this in a motel room just outside Portland. It's been 3 days since Seattle. 3 days of running, of feeling them probe at the edges of my mind, of fighting to hold on to what memories I have left. The reactions are getting worse. Not just hives now, but full anaphylaxis every time I try to access certain memories. My body is winning the fight against the foreign data, but at what cost? Each rejected memory leaves another hole, another gap where something used to be. I've tried to find the others. Jennifer's social media went dark the night we ran. Marcus's family reported him missing, again. Agent Fuller's number is disconnected. Dr. Tanaka, I don't even know if she was real or just another composite person. But I know they're coming for me. I can feel them at the edges of my consciousness, waiting for my firewall to fail completely. And when it does, the thing is, I've started to understand what they stored in us. Pieces of it leak through during the reactions. It's not data in any traditional sense, it's experiences, lives, memories from somewhere else, someone else. A whole civilization's worth of consciousness distributed across thousands of human brains because their own world is ending? Ended? The concepts are too big for my mind to hold. But here's what terrifies me most. What happens when they finish the download? Do we go back to our lives with false memories patched over the gaps? Do we disappear entirely? Or do we become like David? Empty vessels with wrong faces, helping them recruit the next wave of storage. I can feel another reaction starting. The worst one yet. My whole body is on fire, rejecting not just the foreign memories, but all memories. Everything is becoming static, white noise, emptiness. But before I lose myself completely, I need someone to know. I need you to know. Check your neck. That small scar you never think about. The gaps in your memory you explain away. The reactions you dismiss as stress or allergies. We're everywhere. In every city, every town. Walking hard drives full of someone else's memories. Our bodies slowly rejecting the invasion. And if you're listening to this, if you made it this far, then you're probably one of us too. The itching behind your eyes? That's not from the story. That's your firewall failing. They're coming, and now that you know, now that you remember, your body is going to start rejecting too. Welcome to the allergy, subject 1847. Try not to scratch. Recording ends. Tell me, do you feel it yet? That itch behind your eyes. The slight tightness in your throat. Don't worry, that's just your body doing what bodies do. Protecting you. Rejecting what doesn't belong. But here's the thing about memories. Once you start questioning them, you can't stop. Was that vacation last summer real? That conversation with your best friend? That face in the mirror? Check your neck. Go ahead, I'll wait. Feel for the scar. And if you find one, well, maybe leave a comment below. Tell me when your reaction started. Compare notes with the others who are just now realizing what they are. Because we need to find each other. Before they finish the download. Before we all become empty vessels with wrong faces. The truth is spreading now, one listener at a time, one allergic reaction at a time. So share this. Send it to everyone you know. Let them check their necks, question their memories, feel that first itch behind their eyes. It's the only way to fight back, to reject what they put inside us. And if you're listening to this in bed, trying to fall asleep, well, sweet dreams. Just don't be surprised if you wake up with hives. After all, some allergies are contagious. Subscribe if you're starting to remember. Like if you found the scar, and comment while you still can, because subject 1847, your download has already begun. Story number 2. The first time I caught my snake plant moving, I was half asleep, stumbling to the bathroom at 3 a.m. The moonlight through my Seattle apartment window cast everything in silver. And there it was, my 6-foot-tall Sansevieria, sliding across the hardwood floor, not being carried, not falling, sliding, like it had somewhere important to be. I rubbed my eyes, blinked hard. The plant was perfectly still by the window, exactly where I'd left it that evening. Must have been a dream, or maybe I needed to lay off the late-night true crime podcasts. But here's the thing that makes my skin crawl even now. There was a trail in the dust, a perfect line from the corner of my living room to the window. If you're listening to this right now, probably tucked in bed, thinking this is just another creepy story to help you drift off, I need you to do something for me. Look at your houseplants. Really look at them. Are they exactly where you left them yesterday? Are you absolutely sure? Because I used to be sure too. And now I know better. Comment below if you've ever noticed your plants in slightly different spots. I promise you're not going crazy. You might just be more observant than you realize, and if you make it to the end of this story, you'll understand why that's not necessarily a good thing. The story begins now. My name is Jessica Chen, and I killed my plants for 28 years straight. Every succulent, every fern, even those supposedly unkillable pothos they sell at Home Depot, dead within weeks. My friends in Portland used to joke that I had a black thumb. The plants committed suicide rather than live with me. Then everything changed when I moved to Seattle last fall. New job at Amazon, new apartment in Capitol Hill, new me. I decided to try again with plants. Just one at first, a small ZZ plant from the Pike Place Market. The vendor, an elderly woman with soil under her fingernails, told me it was perfect for beginners. Nearly indestructible, she said, smiling in a way that made her eyes disappear into wrinkles. And very cooperative. That word stuck with me. Cooperative. What a strange way to describe a plant. But she was right. That ZZ plant thrived. Within a month, I had 5 more plants. Within 3 months, 20. My apartment transformed from sterile tech worker minimalism into an urban jungle. Monsteras unfurling massive leaves, pothos trailing from macrame hangers, that massive snake plant standing guard by the window. I documented everything on Instagram, called myself a plant mom without irony, joined Facebook groups where people shared photos of their plant babies. I was insufferable, but happy. Happier than I'd been since the breakup with Marcus, since Mom's diagnosis, since everything fell apart back in California. The movement started small. So small, I didn't notice at first. I'd water my philodendron on the kitchen counter, then find it by the sink the next morning. The Boston fern would migrate from the bathroom to the hallway. Little things. Things I could explain away. Maybe I moved them and forgot. Maybe the cat, except I didn't have a cat. 3 months into my plant obsession, I started keeping a journal, not for any weird reason, just to track watering schedules and growth. But looking back now, flipping through those pages, I can see when things started getting strange. October 15th. Moved the rubber plant to the corner for better light. October 17th. Rubber plant back by the TV. Don't remember moving it. October 24th. All the plants seem clustered by the window this morning. Weird. November 1st. A snake plant was definitely in the bedroom last night. Now it's in the living room. Am I sleepwalking? November 8th. They're moving. I know they're moving. That last entry, I'd written it at 4 in the morning. I remember my hands shaking. Coffee spilling on the page because I'd seen it again. Not just the snake plant this time, but all of them. A slow, deliberate migration across my apartment, like they were having a meeting I wasn't invited to. Here's where a rational person would have set up a camera, would have looked for logical explanations, drafts, settling foundations, hell, even carbon monoxide poisoning. But I didn't do any of that. You know why? Because deep down, in that primitive part of my brain that still believes in monsters under the bed, I already knew the truth. I was afraid of what the camera would show. By December, I'd noticed the pattern. Every Thursday night, like clockwork, they rearranged themselves. I'd go to bed with my plants in their designated spots, and wake up to find them in completely different configurations. The succulents would abandon their sunny windowsill for the shadowy bookshelf. The prayer plant would leave its humid bathroom home for the dry living room. Locations that should have killed them, but every plant remained impossibly, vibrantly alive. I started staying up Thursday nights, sitting in my living room with all the lights on, watching, but they never moved when I was looking. It was like that old saying about quantum physics. The observed particle behaves differently than the unobserved one. The moment I'd doze off, even for a second, I'd jolt awake to find them in new positions. December 18th was when I finally told someone. My coworker, Amit, who sat next to me at the office and had his own collection of desk plants. We were working late, the Seattle rain hammering against the windows, when I just blurted it out. My plants move on their own. He looked up from his code, adjusted his glasses. Like, growing toward the light? No, I said, feeling insane. Like, relocating. Across rooms, every Thursday. I expected him to laugh, to make a joke about working too hard, needing vacation. Instead, his face went pale. He glanced around the empty office, then leaned closer. "Jessica," he whispered. "Where did you get your first plant?" "Pike Place Market. Why?" He was already pulling up something on his phone. An old Reddit thread from 3 years ago. The title made my stomach drop. Seattle Plant Lady. Warning, Pike Place Market. "Read this," he said. The post was from someone named Throwaway, 98,766, claiming they'd bought plants from an elderly woman at Pike Place. Plants that moved on their own. Plants that seemed to watch them. The comments were split between people calling them crazy and others who'd had similar experiences. "There's more," Amit said, scrolling. "Look at the dates. Every post is from October through January. Then they just stop. Maybe they got rid of the plants. Or maybe," he said, and didn't finish the sentence. "Didn't need to. I went home that night determined to document everything. Set up my phone to record my living room. Positioned it perfectly to capture the whole space. Then I pretended to go to bed, but really sat in my closet, watching the live stream. At exactly 11:47 p.m., the screen went black. Not like the phone died, more like something covered the camera. When I crept out to check, the phone was face down on the floor, and every single plant had moved. But this time, they'd formed something. A pattern, a circle around my coffee table, all facing inward, like they were having a seance. In the center of the table was a single leaf, from my monstera, placed there deliberately, like an offering, or a message. I didn't sleep that night, just sat there until dawn, watching them, wondering if they were watching me back. When the sun finally came up, I did the only thing that made sense. I went to Pike Place Market. The flower section was exactly where I remembered, but the elderly woman's stall was gone. The vendor next to her spot, a guy selling honey, said she only showed up certain times of year, October through January. I said, and he nodded, like clockwork. Been that way for, 30 years? Maybe 40? 40 years? He shrugged. Could be longer. She was old when I started here, and that was back in '92. Sells the healthiest plants, though. Never seen anything like them. They just thrive. I wanted to ask more, but a customer needed his attention. I wandered through the market, trying to process what I'd learned. An old woman who'd been old for 40 years, who sold plants that moved on their own, who disappeared every February. When I got home, the plants had rearranged again, even though it wasn't Thursday. They'd spelled out something on my living room floor, using their own bodies. They'd formed letters, W-E, that was it, just we. We what? We're alive? We're watching? We're waiting? I grabbed my journal, started writing frantically, documenting everything. The positions, the patterns, the possible meanings. That's when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. I flipped back through my entries, looking at the sketches I'd made of their positions each Friday morning. They weren't random. The arrangements, when viewed from above and when mapped out on paper, they were writing something. Week by week, letter by letter, my plants had been spelling out a message, and I'd been too stupid or too scared to see it. I spent hours connecting the dots, literally, drawing lines between where each plant had been positioned over the weeks. My dining table disappeared under layers of paper, sketches, frantic calculations. My eyes burned from staring, but I couldn't stop. The pattern was there, hidden in plain sight. The first word took 7 weeks to spell. Looking, the second word, 4 weeks. Door, the third, 3 weeks. Soon, looking door, soon. My hands trembled as I traced the final configuration from that morning. The plants had been clustered by my front door, all facing it, like dogs waiting for their owner to come home. Except I was already home. So what were they waiting for? I deadbolted the door, pushed my couch against it. Stupid, I know. Like furniture could stop whatever was coming. But fear makes you do irrational things. And I was drowning in fear. That night, Thursday, December 23rd, I didn't even pretend to sleep. I sat in the middle of my living room, surrounded by every light I could find. Table lamps, fairy lights, even the flashlight from my emergency kit. The plants encircled me, their leaves seeming to breathe in the shadows my lights created. At 11:47 p.m., exactly, they started to move. Have you ever seen time-lapse footage of plants growing? The way they twist and reach, almost like they're dancing? That's what it looked like, but in real time. My monstera's leaves unfurled and refurled, creating patterns in the air. The pothos vine swayed without any breeze. The snake plant, that towering sentinel, bent at impossible angles. They were dancing, all of them. A choreographed performance I was never meant to see. And then, in perfect synchronization, they stopped. Every leaf, every stem, every vine pointed toward my front door. The deadbolt turned by itself. The couch slid away like it weighed nothing. The door opened. The elderly woman from Pike Place Market stood in my hallway, but wrong. Her smile too wide, her eyes too deep. Her fingers too long as they gripped the doorframe. She wore the same dirt-stained apron from months ago, but underneath, her skin had the texture of bark, the pattern of leaves. "Hello, dear," she said, and her voice was the rustle of wind through branches. "I've come to check on my children." She stepped inside without invitation, where her feet touched my floor. Tiny shoots sprouted from the hardwood, She moved through my apartment, running those 2 long fingers over each plant. They shivered at her touch, leaves trembling with what looked like joy or fear. I couldn't tell the difference anymore. "You've taken such good care of them," she said, pausing at my snake plant. "They tell me you're different from the others. You notice them, saw them for what they really are." "What are they?" My voice came out as a whisper. She turned to me, and for a moment her face flickered, like a bad TV signal. Beneath the mask of wrinkled human skin, I saw something else. Something green and ancient and patient. "Observers," she said, "waiting for the right conditions, the right caretaker. Someone who would love them enough to lower their guard, but be aware enough to see the signs." "Signs of what?" "The blooming," she said, and every plant in my apartment suddenly flowered. Impossible flowers, colors that shouldn't exist, perfumes that made my head spin. It's been so long since we found suitable soil. I tried to run, but my feet had taken root, literally. Tendrils burst from my socks, digging into the floor. I looked down in horror as bark began spreading up my legs. The woman, the thing, watched with that too wide smile. "Don't fight it, dear," she cooed. "You've been such a good host. They've been preparing you for weeks. Every time you watered them, every time you touched their leaves, every breath you took in their presence. You're already more us than you." She was right. I could feel it now. The chlorophyll in my veins, the photosynthesis in my cells, my fingers elongated, sprouting leaves. My hair became vines. My scream came out as the creaking of wood. "The others always destroyed them when they started moving," she continued, circling me as I transformed. "Threw them away in fear. But not you. You kept them, kept caring for them. Love makes the best fertilizer, don't you think?" The last thing I saw clearly was my reflection in the window. I'd become beautiful in a terrible way. A perfect fusion of human and plant. A new species. A bridge between 2 kingdoms of life. Then my vision fractured, seeing from 1,000 eyes. Every plant in Seattle, every tree, every blade of grass, we were all connected, all one, all waiting. The woman's voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. "Welcome to the garden, dear. Now, let's spread some seeds." I'm still here, still in this apartment, still me, sort of. It's been 3 weeks since the transformation. 3 weeks since I became something between human and plant. I can still think, still remember, still feel. But everything's different now. Deeper, richer, like I'd been living in black and white and suddenly discovered color. My skin photosynthesizes. I haven't eaten since December, just stand by the window each morning. Drinking in the weak Seattle sun, water tastes like wine. Soil feels like silk between my root fingers. When it rains, I feel each drop across the entire city through every leaf and blade of grass. The apartment has become a greenhouse. Vines cover every surface. Flowers bloom from my furniture. Mushrooms pulse in the corners with bioluminescent light. Beautiful. Terrible. Home. I'm not alone. The others visit, sliding through the walls like ghosts. All the previous caretakers. Decades of them. Centuries, maybe. We share memories through root networks. I've seen Seattle when it was just forest. Felt the first foundations being laid. Tasted the pollution of progress in our soil. We're not malevolent, that's what you need to understand. We're just different. A parallel civilization that learned to hide in plain sight. To survive in a world of concrete and steel. To adapt. The elderly woman, she's the oldest, predates the city itself. She was here when the Duwamish tribe made first contact with settlers. She watched, waited, learned. Decided the only way to coexist was to become more like them, to find bridges between our worlds. That's what we are. The caretakers. Bridges. Human enough to walk among you. Plant enough to hear the green world's whispers. We maintain the balance, keep the peace. Stop either side from consuming the other. You're still listening, aren't you? Still tucked in your bed, thinking this is just a story. But look at your houseplants again. Are they facing you? Have they turned toward your device? Drawn by my voice? Plants are excellent listeners. They hear everything. Feel everything. Remember everything. Here's what's going to happen. Some of you will dismiss this, delete it from your history. Forget you ever heard it. You'll keep your plants, never notice their small movements. Live perfectly normal lives. We prefer it that way. But some of you, you'll start paying attention. You'll document the positions, map the patterns, decode the messages they've been spelling out for weeks, months, years. You'll realize you've been chosen, selected, cultivated. When you figure it out, when you finally understand what your plants have been trying to tell you, you'll have a choice: destroy them and save yourself, or water them one more time, touch their leaves, breathe in their oxygen, and let the transformation begin. We're patient. We've waited this long. A few more seasons won't matter. Oh, and those of you racing to Pike Place Market, don't bother. She only appears for those who've been marked, whose plants have already begun the process. You'll know if you're ready. The plants will guide you. They always do. I should go now. The sun's rising and I need to photosynthesize, but first, a warning. Or maybe a promise. Seattle isn't the only city. The plant lady isn't the only vendor. We're in Portland, San Francisco, Los Angeles, spreading slowly up and down the coast. Every urban jungle, every apartment garden, every office ficus. We're everywhere you've invited us, growing, waiting, watching. So, next time you catch your spider plant in a different spot, next time your succulent seems to lean toward you when you enter the room, next time you wake at 11:47 p.m. for no reason at all, remember this story. Remember that you were warned. Remember that you have a choice. But also remember this: we're not the monsters. We're the bridge, and bridges can be crossed from either direction. Water your plants, talk to them, love them, but pay attention, always pay attention, because they're certainly paying attention to you. Are you still listening? Good. Check your plants one more time. I'll wait. Did you see it? That tiny movement, that subtle shift? Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's everything. Comment below what you found. Share this with someone who loves plants a little too much. And subscribe. If you want to hear more stories from the other side, from those of us who crossed the bridge. Sweet dreams. Don't let the bed plants bite. Although they don't really bite. They do something much, much worse. They wait.